For over a decade, Kufre and I built a life together. We started from nothing, just two young people in love, dreaming of a better future. My family never supported our union because they thought Kufre was arrogant, unworthy of me. But I didn't care. I loved him and I believed in him. I gave up a chance to even study abroad. I sacrificed my dreams to help him build his. We went through hard times, times when we didn't know where our next meal would come from. But together, we made it. Kufre became a pastor and I stood by him, helping him grow his ministry. Things started changing for us. We were no longer struggling. We had a roof over our heads and we had a church filled with people who believed in us. One of our children, though, was born with special needs, but initially, Kufre was supportive. He loved both our children dearly and we worked together to provide the care our special need child needed. It wasn't easy, but we were a family. We leaned on each other and trusted God to guide us. Then one day, a new woman came to our church, a single mother with a young daughter. Her life was a mess. She had no job, no way to take care of her child. My heart went out to her. I told my husband we should help. He agreed. We welcomed her and her daughter into our home. We treated them like family. I thought we were doing the right thing. But things began to change in ways I never expected. Idara, the young girl, grew up under our roof. She was beautiful. Too beautiful, I thought sometimes. But she was sweet, kind, and helpful. I treated her like my own daughter, giving her the love and care I had for my own children. She wasn't just a guest in our house, she was family. But as time passed, I started noticing changes. At first, they were small, little things that I brushed off. Idara was always there for Kufure, helping him with everything from taking care of his room to running errands for him. She was always so close to him and he seemed to appreciate it more than usual. I didn't want to think too much about it. But as Idara turned 16, I began to feel uncomfortable. The way she looked at my husband, the way they talked, it was different. She started disrespecting me. A simple word would set her off and she would answer me with rudeness. At first, I thought I was overreacting. Maybe she was just growing up and testing boundaries, but deep down, I felt something wasn't right. I couldn't ignore it anymore, so one evening, after a long day of work, I confronted my husband, Kufri. Why is Idara taking care of your room all the time? I asked, my voice trembling. Why is she always around you all the time? My husband surged it off. She's just helping me now in Iniobong. I'm like a father to her, that's all. I wasn't convinced, but I let it go. However, deep inside, I felt the walls closing in. The more I tried to talk to him, the more he seemed to distance himself from me. I felt invisible, like I don't matter anymore. Then, one Sunday evening after church, things took a turn for the worse. Idara hadn't gone to church that day, saying she wasn't feeling well. When I went to check on her, I found her collapsed, unconscious on the floor. I rushed her to the hospital. The doctor's words still echo in my mind. She's 4 months pregnant. I was shocked. But as I tried to piece together the puzzle, I discovered the most devastating truth. Idara's pregnancy wasn't a mistake. It was intentional, and the father was none other than Kufuri, my husband. I stood there, frozen, my mind spinning. The man I had loved, the man I had sacrificed everything for, had betrayed me in the worst way possible. But what hurt the most wasn't just the affair. It was his response. He wasn't sorry. He didn't even show remorse. Instead, he insisted he wanted to marry Idara because, as he put it, I can't cope with your special needs child any longer. I need a fresh start. Everything around me crumbled in an instant. My world, once full of hope and love, was now shattered. Kufra had given a portion of our home to Idara and her mother. They moved in, and it felt like they took over. I watched as my husband spent more and more time with them, laughing, talking, doing everything together. It was like I had never existed in his heart. I wasn't his wife anymore. I was just an outsider in my own home. All the while this was going on, my special needs child suffered the most. Without Kufre's support, it became harder to manage her care, but I kept pushing, never giving up on my child. And then, Idara's mother stepped forward, calling herself a prophetess. She claimed God had spoken to her, revealing that I was the one trying to destroy Idara's life and unborn child. She stood in front of the congregation during a church service one Sunday and pointed at me, accusing me of witchcraft. She is the one who wants to kill Idara, she said, her voice shaking with false righteousness. She is full of evil. My heart sank. How could this be happening? How could my own family, my own husband, turn against me so easily? I tried to defend myself, but no one believed me. My husband stood by Idara and her mother, refusing to listen to my pleas. It was as if I was invincible to him, as if everything I had done for him, everything I had sacrificed didn't matter anymore. Idara's mother insisted that I needed deliverance, that I was possessed by a spirit of evil. I refused. I wasn't going to let them control me, accuse me, and make me feel like I was less than nothing. But as the weeks passed, I became more and more isolated. People at church began whispering about me. My friends turned away, too afraid to speak up. And all the while, Kufre stayed silent, hiding behind the lies of Idara and her mother. I didn't tell my family. Not at first. I didn't want to burden them with my pain. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of saying, I told you so. But deep inside, I knew that this wasn't just a phase. This wasn't going to pass. My family was being ripped apart and I was powerless to stop it. I had lost everything. The man I loved, the life I had built, the trust I thought we shared, my future, and the worst past. No one, absolutely no one believed me. Months went by and I clung to the hope that things would get better. Every day I prayed to God, asking for a way to restore my home, to heal the brokenness in my marriage, but nothing changed. Kufre became more distant. His heart seemingly hardened against me. His focus was entirely on Idara and her mother. I watched helplessly as the man I once loved, the man I had given everything for, drifted further away. I kept praying, kept waiting, but with each passing day, the pain of abandonment grew. I was drowning in my own sorrow, yet my husband didn't seem to notice. He didn't care. My health began to deteriorate from the weight of the emotional toll I was carrying. I had no strength left in me. No one to fight. All I wanted was for things to go back to how they used to be, when my family was whole and my heart was at peace. One morning, I woke up feeling weaker than usual. I could barely get out of bed. The pain in my chest was unbearable. I didn't have the strength to call out for help. It wasn't until I fainted, collapsing onto the floor, that my children finally realized how serious it had become. They rushed to my side, crying out in panic. It was then they called my parents to come take me to the hospital. I could hear my children's desperate voices, but I was too weak to respond. I felt like I was slipping away, as if the world was fading around me. I just wanted to be held, to know that someone cared, but the only thing I felt was emptiness. My parents arrived at the house in a rush, their faces full of concern. They quickly took me to the hospital. My heart ached because as I lay in that hospital bed, weak and vulnerable, my husband didn't even come to check on me. He didn't call, didn't visit. It was as if I no longer existed in his world. My parents tried repeatedly to contact him, calling him again and again, but he never answered. He didn't care that I was on the verge of losing my life. He didn't care about me at all. When I regained enough strength to leave the hospital, my parents insisted I stay with them for a while to recover. I agreed, too weak to protest. I took my children and left the house that had once been our home. I needed to heal, not just physically, but emotionally. The weight of betrayal had crushed my spirit, and I needed time to find myself again. But even as I left, I couldn't escape the whispers that followed me. One of my loyal church members, someone I had always trusted, came to me with a message. "They are saying you ran away," she told me, her voice filled with disbelief. "They said you left because you are a witch and the fire was too hot for you." I was stunned. It felt like the world was mocking me, turning against me at every turn. Idara's mother and my husband had spread lies about me, claiming that I had fled because I couldn't handle the heat of their so-called truth. They were calling me a witch, accusing me of things I had never done, things I could never have imagined. I couldn't understand why they would do this to me. How could the people I had trusted, the man I had loved, betray me in such a cruel way? My heart broke all over again as I realized that nothing I had done mattered to them anymore. The sacrifices, the love, the faithfulness, it meant nothing. I spent my days in my parents' house trying to regain my strength, but each time I closed my eyes, I could see the faces of the people who had once been my family, people I had fought for, cared for, and believed in, and yet they had all turned their backs on me. The pain in my chest never went away. It wasn't just the physical sickness, it was the emotional wound that had been inflicted on me. I had given my all for a family that no longer existed. I had loved and been loyal, and in return, I was labeled a witch. The lies they told about me, the way they made me seem like the villain in a story that I didn't even recognize, it all hurt more than I could explain. But through all of this, I knew one thing. I could not let them break me. I would find a way to heal, to rise from this darkness. After the storm that had broken my family, I realized I needed to do something for myself and my children. I couldn't keep wallowing in pain. I had to build a future for us. My parents, seeing my determination, encouraged me to go back to school. My father enrolled me in a private technological school where I chose to study computer engineering. The journey wasn't easy. I juggled school and motherhood. Although my mother was a great help, she cared for my children with so much love, giving me the space I needed to focus on my studies. My parents took over the care of my special needs child, ensuring she received the medical attention she desperately needed. Slowly but surely, she began to thrive. With their love and support, my child started meeting her milestone. Today, she is a proud ambassador of an international organization that advocates for children with special needs in Nigeria. She is also a role model, inspiring other children and parents facing similar challenges, making them understand that every child is unique and special in their own ways. I buried myself in my book, fueled by the desire to rise above the betrayal and heartbreak I had endured. 4 years passed like a whirlwind. I finally graduated. That day, as I stood on the podium receiving my certificate, I felt a sense of pride I hadn't felt in years. My parents, beaming with joy, hugged me tightly. "You have made us proud," my father said, tears glistening in his eyes. Soon after, I secured a job at an international tech company based in Lagos. It felt like a fresh start. My hard work was paying off, and for the first time in years, I could breathe without the weight of sorrow pressing down on me. I began to rebuild my life. My children thrived under my care, and my parents remained my pillar of strength. One afternoon, while I was in a meeting at work, my phone vibrated. It was my mother. Something in her tone told me this wasn't a casual call. "Your husband's sister came to the house," she began. I froze, unsure of what to expect. "What did she want?" I asked cautiously. "She came to tell us that your husband is in the hospital. He had a terrible accident and now is battling for his life. They also discovered that the child Idara claimed was isn't his after all. The real father of the child showed up, claiming his son." My mother explained. Her words hit me like a ton of brick. Wait, what? I asked, struggling to process the information. Yes, she continued. After the truth came out, Idara and her mother packed everything they could take from the house and ran away. They didn't even look back. My heart and head span. I sat there, gripping the phone tightly. The man who had once been my world was now at rock bottom. The same people he betrayed me for had taken advantage of him and abandoned him. My mother went on. Your father was furious when your husband's sister showed up. He chased her away, warning her never to step foot in this house again. He said you have moved on and didn't need that kind of trouble in your life anymore. I swallowed hard. My emotions swelled me. A part of me felt vindicated. Justice had been served. But another part of me, the part that still remembered the man I once loved, felt a pang of sadness. How bad is he? I finally asked. He is in a bad state, my mother admitted softly. But my daughter, you have been through so much. You don't owe him anything. Focus on yourself and your children. I nodded silently, though she couldn't see me. Thank you, Mama. I will think about what to do. That evening, I sat by myself, reflecting on everything that had happened. Life had a strange way of coming full cycle. Kufre, who once cast me aside and called me a witch, called my daughter a burden, was now alone and vulnerable. The people he chose over us had betrayed him. Life had become a rhyme of peace and purpose for me. My children were thriving and my career in the international tech company was blossoming. My special needs child, now an ambassador for an international organization, was traveling the world, inspiring others like her. She had become a source of pride and hope for so many, including me. Then, one fateful afternoon, my mother called with news that would shake my very core. Kufure's sister had returned to my father's house while he was away. My mother, always gracious and compassionate, decided to hear her out. Kufure's sister was one of the few who had never supported the wickedness of her brother and Ekaite had unleashed on me. She had tried to fight for me in the past, but her voice had been drowned out by the noise of deceit and lies. Now she sat in my parents' living room, pleading for a chance to speak with me. My mother asked for my permission before sharing my contact. After thinking it over, I agreed. Soon my phone rang, and on the other end was Kufure's sister. Her voice was heavy with emotions. She began to beg, not just for herself but for Kufure. He is in the worst state I have ever seen him in, she said, her voice cracking. The accident left him almost immobile and his diabetes had worsened. He needs urgent medical attention abroad and we don't have the means to make it happen. She went on to explain that Kufre had asked for me, the woman he had betrayed, abandoned, and humiliated. He knows he wronged you, she continued. He is begging for forgiveness and asking to see you. Her words felt like a punch to the gut. Memories of the pain, the night I cried myself to sleep, the humiliation I endured in my own home, and the burden of raising our children alone came flooding back. But then she said something that struck a chord. Your daughter, she said, the one he once rejected, is now his only hope. Because of her ambassadorial role, she has access to resources and opportunities that can save his life. Isn't it ironic how life works? Later that evening, Kufure himself called me. His voice, once commanding and arrogant, was now weak and pleading. Iniobong, he said, I know I don't deserve it, but I am asking for your forgiveness. Please, just let me see you and the children. I am so sorry for everything. I sat in silence, holding the phone to my ear. My mind raced with conflicting emotions. I thought about my children and how they had grown stronger without him. I thought about my daughter who had defied the odds and become a beacon of hope for others. I also thought about myself, the woman I had become after the storm. I had found strength I never knew I had, rebuilt my life, and created a future for my children. But the question lingers, did he deserve my help? That night, I sat down with my children and told them everything. My son looked at me and said, Mama, you have always taught us to forgive, but you have also taught us to value ourselves. Whatever you decide, we will support you. My daughter, with her calm and wise demeanor, simply said, Mama, sometimes helping someone isn't about what they deserve, it's about who you are. Her words stayed with me as I lay in bed that night. I couldn't raise the pain Kufre had caused, but I also couldn't ignore the irony of the situation. The child he once rejected was now his only hope. The truth is, life has a way of teaching us lessons in unexpected ways. Kufre's downfall wasn't just about karma, it was a reminder that every choice has consequences. I had the financial means to help him, and my daughter's role as an ambassador provided access to medical care he desperately needed. But forgiveness, that was the hardest part. In the end, I realized that forgiveness wasn't about him, it was about me. I don't want to carry the weight of bitterness any longer. However, forgiveness didn't mean I would let him back into my life. So, I made my decision. I would help him get the medical care he needed. Not for his sake, but for mine and for our children's. I wanted to teach them that grace is a strength, not a weakness. But after that, I would walk away for good. Some doors are meant to close forever, no matter how much the past tries to reopen them. Life lessons. To anyone watching and listening to this, I want you to know this. Life may break you, but it can also build you into something stronger. Sometimes, the people who hurt you the most are the ones who teach you the greatest lessons. Forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you do. And when the time comes to choose between holding on and letting go, choose yourself. Always choose yourself.